For generations, capitalism has generated both wealth and prosperity. For a time, it seemed that this would continue forever, but some experts say capitalism has reached a crossroads.
Something we've observed essentially not at all in hundreds or thousands of years of human history.
I think we're in the latter stages of the 2 centuries of economic growth that goes back to the Industrial Revolution.
Nous sommes dans un moment tout à fait charnière qui ressemble à ce qui s'est passé à la fin du XVIIIe siècle.
A striking development is widening disparities around the world. Enormous fortunes are now concentrated among a small number of billionaires. They're using their money to try to influence the future of their countries.
If you give a politician a lot of money, how can they help but know who you are? That's human nature. That is human nature.
On the flip side is ever-growing poverty. The wealth of the world's 62 richest individuals is equal to that of the 3.6 billion of the poorest people. The economic gap between rich and poor has never been greater.
Well, we're supposedly living in one of the most richest countries in the world. I don't understand it.
In business, large global companies have become richer than many countries, and they're using their wealth to command growing market shares. In South America, a lawsuit brought by a corporate giant has driven the government of Ecuador into a corner.
Pago a Lox más Chevron 1.100 millones en 6 meses. O sea, el choque ha sido durísimo. La historia sabrá reconocer todo esto. Yo le voy a poner
Severe unemployment is spreading in Europe. Uncertainty about the future is fueling concern and anger.
Millions of people have difficulty to live socially, ecologically, on peace. Capitalism is guilty.
Une société qui ne soit pas un capitalisme sauvage qui exploite les travailleurs.
Underlying these developments is a significant shift. In the past, industrialized countries were the driving force of the global economy, but their growth has lost steam since the 2008 financial crisis. The situation has some analysts asking, will economic growth as we know it continue? To answer this question, we'll revisit capitalism's roots. Britain is the birthplace of modern capitalism. Over 200 years ago, Adam Smith published an economic treatise that would help set the stage for the growth-based economy.
So these 2 volumes are the first editions of Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations.
Smith wrote that when people act in their own self-interest, an invisible hand guides society to prosperity. Just as he proposed, the world economy did expand for 240 years. But now, Smith's homeland, Britain, is confronting difficult challenges. Experts have found that the number of young people without a job or home has surpassed 80,000. Increasing homelessness among the young is one sign that capitalism could be in decline. In the past, middle-aged or older people were more likely to become homeless because of debt, layoffs, or other reasons. Now, younger members of the labor force are ending up on the street because they can't find work. Experts say this suggests the engine of Britain's economic growth is beginning to run out of gas. Even people with higher education or special qualifications are finding it hard to secure work.
Hello, Nadia.
One example is Nadia Kabia, who lives in London.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Her job search has gone on for 2 years.
I was hoping that last year I would be able to get a job, and nothing happened. I went for many interviews and I didn't get them. 10 years ago, I could have a contract like this. Yeah? Now, the competition is extremely high.
Nadia got a university degree in social work, hoping that would lead to stable employment.
No, just now, sleeping.
At home, she's caring for her sick mother and has to support the household.
Financially, it's not doable because of caring for my mum. It's quite difficult. I want to work. I really want to work.
Grim statistics can be seen across a range of British industries. Growth is sluggish in a wide variety of sectors, including manufacturing and trade. Experts say economic stagnation contributed to Britain's decision to leave the European Union.
At the global level, the UK has been at the forefront of driving international trade and globalisation agenda since the 80s. And I think it has changed the face of our economy hugely. I think people might be surprised that the UK has been one of the first countries to manifest that, given our history. And
analysts say this may not be a temporary phenomenon, but a fundamental shift. That's because the problems aren't limited to Britain, but affect other countries as well. Here is a graphical representation of global economic growth over time. Red indicates fast expansion, while blue implies slow growth. Bars that extend underground depict economic contraction. In the mid-20th century, the pace of global growth increased, punctuated by occasional stagnation. But 2008, the year Lehman Brothers collapsed, marked a major change. Growth in many parts of Europe turned negative. The economies of Japan and South Korea were also mired in stagnation. Lawrence Summers was Treasury Secretary under former U.S. President Bill Clinton. He's an international authority on economic growth. Summers believes the world has entered an unprecedented age of secular or sustained stagnation.
Growth is slow. Incomes are not rising rapidly. Inflation is below target, and the threat of deflation exceeds the risk of inflation almost everywhere. Something we've observed essentially not at all in hundreds or thousands of years of human history. So we're really in a very different place than we've been accustomed to being.
Let's take a closer look at what Summers is talking about. In the past, when an economy entered a recession, it would bounce back with the help of economic policy or as part of a business cycle. On the whole, gradual expansion continued. But Summer says this time, growth appears to have hit an invisible ceiling that prevents it from moving higher. Furthermore, declines in wages and other growth engines, such as prices, are putting a serious drag on the economy. Summer says this time is completely different from past downturns.
Financial crisis is like an infectious illness. It can be devastating, but if you treat it, it goes away. This is a quiet depression that is more a chronic illness that may ultimately be as or more debilitating than the infectious illness that's represented by financial crisis. It turns out that it invests less, which leaves it less of a capital stock in the future. That young people make less of a transition, good transition from school to work, and that hits them and hurts them. It turns out that people who've been out of work for a significant interval tend to become somewhat habituated to not working, and when they become habituated to not working, it's hard for them to get back to work. Then they become more pessimistic about the future. And because they're more pessimistic about the future, they spend less.
What makes secular stagnation different from past crises or recessions is that the economic measures taken so far have not delivered the expected results. After the collapse of Lehman Brothers, global financial ministers and central bank chiefs came up with a set of coordinated stimulus measures. Mervyn King, then governor of the Bank of England, took part.
Nobody around that table 8 years ago imagined that we would be where we are today. But in 2008, when the banking crisis hit, the finance ministers and central bank governors of the G7 countries met in Washington, decided to cut interest rates essentially to zero, to begin the process of buying assets to increase the amount of money in the economy, so-called quantitative easing. Then we'd simply adjust prices and the economy would get back to full employment.
At the time, King and other leaders expected that a low interest rate policy would resolve the crisis. Central banks drove interest rates down in a bid to jumpstart growth. Low interest rates make borrowing money more appealing and reduce interest income on savings. As a result, people and businesses should spend more. By getting more money into circulation, policymakers hope to encourage consumption and investment and revive economies. But even slashing interest rates to extreme levels didn't provide the expected boost. King says conventional wisdom about capitalism no longer holds in the current economic climate.
And the fact that we've had to carry on cutting interest rates now to negative territory, to go on buying asset purchases, and still we don't get a sustainable recovery. And those expectations about the policy environment, what crazy things will government do in the future, makes people, I think, more cautious now, and therefore less willing to spend. With the idea of the invisible hand of Adam Smith guiding the market economy around the world to a stable equilibrium, realized that the narrative they've been using, which was that stability was sustainable, was wrong. The market economy is a wonderful way for generating productivity growth. It's what we need to rely on. But what we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking is that it will automatically correct itself whenever we find ourselves in a downturn. We live in a world of tremendous uncertainty, where it's not possible to take out insurance against all possible eventualities.
Some say the world has reached its limits in terms of economic growth. We spoke to an economist who has explored this issue.
Thanks very much for having us.
Tim Jackson at the University of Surrey in Britain has been studying the history of human prosperity. He says the world is confronting a loss of frontiers.
Capitalism really has progressed by expanding those frontiers. The Earth, it's our home, and here, 200 or 300 years ago, the economy is small in relation to the planet as a whole. Is what happens. Capitalism, growth expands this economy, and all of a sudden, we're looking at this very much. In very simplistic terms, that sort of demonstrates the challenge, if you like, of a finite planet with an expanding economy.
Let's take a closer look at the frontiers Jackson is talking about and what it means to lose them. Domestic development is the starting point of economic expansion, but the resources and industrial expansion possible within a single economy are limited, so growth eventually peaks. Once this happens, countries set out to increase their wealth by exploring frontiers and acquiring colonies. In this way, they obtain cheap labor and bigger markets, further boosting growth. In the 20th century, industrialized nations began investing in and trading with emerging countries. They ventured far and wide to find new sources of growth and to expand. But the limitations of explosive growth have become apparent. This image shows the annual expansion in trade partners for the United States, the world's largest economy. In the 1960s, the U.S. expanded its frontiers to 72 countries, including those in Africa and other parts of the world. In the 1980s, the U.S. started trading with countries in Micronesia. And trade with fast-growing China also took off. Soon after the turn of the century, the U.S. economic frontiers extended to 150 countries worldwide. But the wealth they generate may be reaching its limit.
Your economy is predicated on the idea that it will go on growing and growing and growing forever. Not just for the people who still need nutrition, the poorest in the world, but actually for everyone, even in the richest economies, that we'll just grow our economies. But we live on a finite planet. We live on only one planet. A lifestyle of a North American, for example, if it were extended to all 7 billion people who are now on the planet and the 10 billion who will be on the planet in 2050, we know that we would need 4 or 5 planets. The process of growth has a natural slowing down in advanced economies that we are now beginning to see in practice. And that too is a limit to the idea of a growth-based economy.
As the physical frontiers reached their limits, people began looking for potential in another area, the financial sphere. Unlike the real economy, it generates profits through borderless transactions of currencies and other assets. Money begets more money in a world of financial alchemy. People flock to it, looking for new sources of growth. Starting from the 1990s, the value of financial assets, such as stocks and bonds, grew rapidly, at one point reaching $206 trillion. That's 3.5 times the value of the real economy that produces actual goods and services. Then, in 2008, the U.S. investment bank Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. That helped to set off the global financial crisis and exposed the limitations of a finance-based economy. After that, growth in the financial sphere hit a ceiling. Many economists began saying the world had run out of frontiers. Proof of that is revealed by a certain trend. So says the economist and social theorist Jacques Attali.
Le marché sans démocratie, c'est la garantie de la corruption, de l'économie criminelle, des inégalités et du chaos. Mais le capitalisme par nature est égocentrique. Et en effet, le capitalisme, c'est le maître mot du capitalisme, c'est moi d'abord. C'est moi d'abord, j'ai intérêt à mon bonheur. Mais c'est une vision fausse. Le capitalisme, c'est le meilleur système au monde lorsqu'il est complété par la démocratie et la prise en compte de l'intérêt général. Sinon, c'est le fossoyeur de l'humanité.
Attali points to numerous cases of fraud committed by big companies. All are major businesses from around the world that have built solid track records and gained consumers' trust. They've engaged in the types of fraud and corruption that were once unthinkable. The growing incidence of corporate fraud may be one sign that economic growth is nearing its limit. This idea could help explain the story of a massive trading scam that shook the financial industry. It was carried out by this man, Kweku Adoboli. He was working for UBS, a leading European bank, when he lost more than $2 billion through unauthorized trades. He was arrested and sent to prison. The media labeled him a rogue trader. But Adoboli says he had to resort to fraud. He says it was necessary to make profits at an organization that wasn't growing fast anymore.
We suffered this effectively a near-death event where the institution almost had failed to survive. And the bank has decided that we need to start to take more risk.
UBS had posted huge losses in the wake of the financial crisis. Adoboli says he'd been pressured to quickly generate profits to help turn the company's finances around. Adoboli says failure was not an option. He began making repeated trades in amounts that were larger than were allowed. He did this using funds in a secret account known as the umbrella.
And so we started to use the umbrella to help to achieve the institution's goals. So where the bank wanted us to take more risk, we used the umbrella to help us to take that risk, basically. If you have a $10 million profit day when the market only moved 1%, you had to have a risk exposure of $1 billion. When we were profitable doing this activity, everybody was happy, our managers were aware of it, and they were happy with us because they knew that in order for us to generate the profits we were generating, we had to be taking greater risks than what was being said. The problem was we were wrong. We called the market wrong, and the outcome was deeply negative. And to try and resolve that deep negative outcome, we tried even harder to recoup the losses.
By the time the scheme came to light, the losses had ballooned to over $2 billion. UBS said Adoboli acted on his own, and his managers denied any involvement. He was convicted and was ordered to be deported.
Sense of what was dishonest and what was not dishonest within that institutional context came about 2 months after I'd been arrested and I was sitting in Wandsworth prison. It's the same thing of Volkswagen. Really difficult emissions targets have been set. Rather than just say we can't meet those emissions targets, some engineers within the institution decide, for whatever reason, that they can find a way to make it look like they're meeting that target, even if they're not. We always try and find one person or a small group of people and ask those people or make those people take responsibility. The reality, however, being that unless we look at the culture of the industry, we never fix the behavior of the industry. And therefore, these things keep happening.
Robert Reich of the University of California studies contemporary economic challenges. He was Secretary of Labor during Bill Clinton's presidency. Reich warns that capitalism itself is beginning to change.
By supercapitalism, I mean a very high velocity of capitalism, where not only is the world knitted together, but technology makes everything quicker and faster and better and cheaper. Even people who have very, very strong citizen social consciences about the importance of communities, of want to get the best deal possible, maximizing shareholder value and doing the best job for consumers is absolutely necessary for survival. Capitalism would lead us back to the jungle. I mean, a state of nature, the dominance of the strongest.
Yet some experts say further economic expansion is still possible. Robert Gordon of Northwestern University is a global authority on macroeconomics. He believes technological innovation, which has repeatedly played an important role in the history of capitalism, is the key to breaking through the stagnation.
Throughout the history of the last 150 years, on average, the standard of living of each generation has doubled compared to the standard of living of the previous generation. In 1870, we came to the second industrial revolution, and this was the big one. This was the time when, within just a few months, we had the invention of the electric light, the internal combustion engine, ongoing innovation happening in many areas. 3D printing, robots, artificial intelligence, big data, autonomous vehicles, all of that is happening. We have plenty of technological change. It's just that it's taking place in areas that are not adding to business productivity.
One innovation that's been drawing increased attention is artificial intelligence. This cutting-edge technology is already reinventing the world of finance.
Very successful in this event, yeah.
You know, you're happy today, and then...
We met with executives of an investment fund on what turned out to be an extraordinary day.
The UK has voted to leave the European Union.
Britain's Brexit vote sent world markets plunging and resulted in losses estimated at about $2 trillion. But with the aid of artificial intelligence, this company's trading system instantly picked up and responded to market fluctuations. The firm secured total gains of more than 5%.
And I think that's, you know, that says a lot about our style of trading. We're taking that emotion out of the trading. We're not the people panicking on the television. We're not slamming the phones down. So when the system is behaving as expected, well, that's normal for us.
Profile shots. He tried his best, man. He just couldn't be with it.
Robert Rotella is the company's president. In the 1980s, he became legendary as a pioneer of computerized trading, a forerunner of the current AI-based system. He's also a professional photographer. Even when he's out taking pictures, his AI trading system is at work, buying and selling stocks.
When the actual trade is made, it is pretty much done systematically. The computer does the actual trading.
Well, I can say that the financial markets have helped me to photograph because I've been very fortunate trading the financial markets, and it's allowed me the freedom.
Rotella thinks artificial intelligence could lead to further growth if it can be engineered to make accurate predictions.
Definitely the neural networks, the AI. That's very, very important. We think that that's going to be an increasingly important aspect of the business. And I would say we are looking at some other areas which I can't talk about right now. If the market does certain things, then we will buy or sell based on what those things are. What we would like to do for some of our future work is try to predict the market will make a top or make a bottom at a certain point, say a month from now, and then from there we want to buy or sell going forward.
Another potentially transformative trend is the growth of the so-called sharing economy. A conventional capitalist economy promotes the manufacture, ownership, and consumption of goods to sustain growth. The sharing economy upends this system through a novel economic model. Instead of producing goods, profit is generated through the sharing of resources and services. Today, up-and-coming venture firms that embrace the sharing economy are thriving and generating big profits. Leading the pack is Uber, the transportation networking service. Just 7 years after its launch, its net worth had topped $68 billion. The company has swept through North America and Europe, and its valuation is now higher than major automakers. Another company that's attracting notice demonstrated its growing influence in 2016 during the European Soccer Championship.
We stayed in an Airbnb.
An Airbnb? Yeah. Good price. Easy. Yeah.
Airbnb is the world's largest online marketplace for listing and booking accommodations. The company has been expanding its presence in Paris. Gregory Lucerf offers homestay accommodations on Airbnb.
Did they get a picture of your new awning?
The rates he charges undercut hotels by about 30%. He gets a lot of travelers on a budget.
It's a great value.
Yes, it was very good price.
Very good. More than what we expected.
We feel like we're Parisians.
For Gregory, listing with Airbnb is a side business. Over the past year, he netted $30,000 in extra income.
C'est pas négligeable non plus, ça me fait un revenu, oui, ça me fait un revenu. Alors, c'est appréciable, c'est vraiment appréciable.
Just 8 years after it launched, Airbnb's net worth topped $25.5 billion. Airbnb estimates that in 2016, the number of users topped 100 million. Joe Gebbia is the company's co-founder and CPO.
That's a foregone conclusion.
He sees the sharing economy as the driver of future growth.
That's going to happen. Down to the bottles of sake are from the local sake brewery in Yoshino. The sharing economy is a transaction with the promise of human connection. And we see that unfold every single day on Airbnb. Tonight alone, there's over 700,000 people sharing a home with each other in 191 countries around the world. And so the impact of that is phenomenal. We know that seniors love using Airbnb, that they love hosting and sharing their home, both from an economics perspective to earn extra income. And so just through the Airbnb community, what I see every day are now millions of people who are making ends meet and starting to get ahead financially in their life by sharing their home using our service. And seeing a shift in the 20th century way of approaching capitalism to a 21st century model of capitalism, which is much more distributed and much more transferring power and responsibility into the people.
The process of innovation doesn't leave everyone better off.
This is so nice.
The economist Joseph Schumpeter coined the term creative destruction to describe how new businesses destroy old ones. In the midst of economic stagnation, innovative ideas emerge. Demand grows for new, convenient, and cheaper alternatives, leaving obsolete ones to die out. But imitators emerge one after the next, depressing profitability across the entire market. In Schumpeter's view, never-ending destruction is essential for economic growth. The rise of the sharing economy is now triggering a shakeout among established businesses. Nathalie Eckel runs a 4-star hotel on Ile Saint-Louis in Paris. It used to be full 6 months in advance, but the number of guests have sharply declined.
Ça a commencé en juin, l'euro. Ouais, bah, début juin, c'était pas encore terrible. Mais on n'était pas complet. Hein.
There were vacancies even during what should have been a busy time, the soccer championship. Sales were down by 20%. By comparison, demand for Airbnb listings was strong.
Mais c'est ce qu'ils font à peu près, c'est-à-dire que j'avais vu les chiffres, je crois qu'au mois d'avril et au mois de mai, quand les hôteliers ont vu leur taux d'occupation vraiment baisser, Airbnb avait annoncé 89% de remplissage. C'est quand même l'horreur.
The hotel is surrounded by Airbnb competitors. Eckel was forced to let go of 3 veteran employees.
Parce que c'est très lourd. Je pense que c'est le démon, enfin, c'est ce qu'il pouvait y avoir de pire dans l'économie numérique, allié à un capitalisme forcé.
The rise of Airbnb is also affecting the community. As the number of accommodations increases, more and more residents are moving away.
Non, non, ils mangent. Oui, l'appartement, oui, parce que les personnes âgées, quand elles décèdent, souvent les enfants ne veulent pas récupérer l'appartement parce qu'ils habitent ailleurs, dans un autre arrondissement ou en banlieue. Et c'est des sociétés immobilières qui rachètent et qui, eux, après le louent à des touristes qui viennent de passage.
A 2015 survey found that 17% of area residences were being used as accommodations.
Voilà, l'île Saint-Louis. Donc, 1861 logements. 304. Naturellement envahi par Airbnb pour des raisons de rentabilité capitalistique. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Destruction d'emplois, c'est-à-dire le fleuriste, les petits magasins du coin, qui n'ont plus la clientèle des habitants, disparaissent. Est-ce qu'il y a création à côté? Réponse non.
But even Airbnb is not immune to the threat of creative destruction. Imitators offering similar services are popping up all over. Airbnb's management has responded by calling for continuous innovation, saying it's key to survival.
I do think the cycle of innovation is accelerating, and I think you constantly have to stay one step ahead of yourself in order to stay relevant as a technology company. I think what's really important is that you never settle, and you never look at the core business and say that's it, but you're constantly looking out over the horizon to see what's next. In the 1990s in Silicon Valley, there was a list of the top 10 companies, technology companies, 9 of which you've never heard of, because they were the hottest companies at their time, but they didn't innovate. They didn't continue to embrace change as the world of technology changed around them, and today they don't exist anymore. So I think there's a lot of lessons in the history of technology and innovation that would inform us how important it is to continually be investing both simultaneously in your core product and in looking ahead at what's next.
Humans continue their relentless pursuit of growth. Facebook has set its sights on the world's 5 billion people who lack internet access. Its goal is to provide wireless web access from the sky.
Liftoff.
By 2020, another company plans to open a hotel in space. The race is on to open frontiers in the sky. Kweku Adoboli caused massive losses for his former employer through secret trades. He looked back on the scandal in Edinburgh, Adam Smith's hometown.
We always use this term, the invisible hand of the market. It's kind of interesting to be in Edinburgh.
Do you think you were manipulated by an invisible hand?
The forces or the influences on me are the same influences on everyone else in the marketplace.
These days, he shares his experiences with others in the hope they won't repeat his mistake.
Telling you to bind your heart. They find ways to go inside you to make.
Today, he's addressing a group of students at the University of Edinburgh who aspire to careers in finance.
I'm saying to you today, understand that we were in a spiral. We couldn't see it. As we became more desperate, we lost the ability to think in a rational and calm way, to manage our risk.
It opened my eyes as well to, let's think about a purpose, why I want to go into this system.
For us, it's a very good message to take with us for our future. So that was very useful information to know.
In his book, The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith argued that pursuits in the name of self-interest result in social good. On his gravestone is the title of one of his other books. the theory of moral sentiments. This is how it begins. How selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature. Smith names sympathy as one of them. Two and a half centuries on, leading intellectuals say it's time to review what the pursuit of growth through capitalism means.
Le meilleur système pour moi, c'est un système capitaliste, démocratique, ce qui n'est pas le cas. Le marché produit des inégalités. Si la démocratie n'organise pas le transfert et d'autres ressources, on ira à la catastrophe. Donc c'est l'économie de marché démocratique et ce que j'appelle l'économie positive, c'est-à-dire l'économie qui travaille dans l'intérêt des générations suivantes. Je rêve idéalement d'une assemblée à côté de l'Assemblée des Nations Unies qui déciderait, délibérerait en fonction de l'intérêt des générations de 2100 et qui ferait en sorte que les décisions sur la dette, sur l'environnement, sur la démographie soient prises dans cet intérêt.
Capitalism creates a kind of obese society, a society that doesn't recognize that there are also limits to our own material aspirations, that actually having more food doesn't make you more healthy. At a certain point it makes you unhealthy. Having more stuff doesn't make you more happy. At a certain point it's just clutter. It's a limit, all of those limits, the resource limit, the environmental limit, the secular limit, the economic limit, if you like, are all telling us that we have to look beyond a growth-based economy. We have to look past growth and begin to structure our economies in ways which aren't necessarily growing incessantly.
There are really two different ways of thinking about growth. One way is just more, that is, more stuff, more resources that are being put into the form of manufactured goods and services, and people fill up their homes with more and more stuff that they buy. Now that form of growth is not sustainable, but there's a second form of growth that has to do with the capacity of an economy, to the productive capacity of an economy to do a variety of things, including environmental protection. So this form of growth has to do with capacity to make choices that include the environment, public health, education, and many other public goods. If we do that, not only are our economies more sustainable, but our planet is more sustainable.
Conventional notions of growth are coming under scrutiny. Perhaps the time has come to rethink capitalism for a new age.